Hello, my Concealed Coalition family. Austin Davis, your National Director of Training. And this month's webinar is about situational awareness. Whether this situational awareness relates to your public, your personal, or your private life. The reason why we're doing this topic this month is because I get calls all the time. Austin, I need a class on how to shoot better and how to be safer. And I go, those are great ideas that seldom ever intersect. If you really want the fastest way to become safer is to increase your situational awareness game with a systematic approach. And that's the whole point of this webinar today, is to let you leave here with a systematic approach. Now, we're going to go for a little visual aid. I don't know if you ever remember when you were a kid and you were in school, you'd have the substitute teacher and they'd play the video and you wouldn't have to do much. Well, I have a visual aid coming up here and I'd like to run it for you now. It's only about 1:40 seconds, but all this is going to relate to what we're talking about today. It is me in a recent skydive with a buddy of mine named Carlos. Carlos, the guy who's flying the camera's got 9,000 jumps. And we're going to talk about how situational awareness relates to skydiving in the beginning. And you're going, what do those two things have to do with each other? Situational awareness is very important to skydiving if you want to skydive again. So let's hit the footage of me at 14,500 feet. Rolling, here we go. You see that red light over there? That's important. That's telling us we're close, but we're not ready to jump. We open the door, and you're going to see us climbing out here in a second. It's very strange from outside the airplane. You're going to notice I climb out, but then I look back in. Now, the reason I'm looking back in is because I didn't see the green light before I went out there. And I'm entering into what's called a transitional space. So I thought, better check. Out, in, and there we go. Now, at this point in time, situational awareness is very important. I've got to be aware of where the airplane is, where those other jumpers coming out are so they don't get in my airspace, I'm getting their airspace. I've got to be aware of where Carlos, my camera buddy, is. I've got to be aware of my ground. I've got to be aware of my quadrants of attention. I can't be so externally broad focused that I forget about certain things, interior broad focus. I've also got to stay really constant about where I'm flying in relation to Carlos and where the drop zone is. You can see me here kind of take off, kind of cruise on over. That's called tracking because I want to get in the place out of everybody else's airspace. And then you're going to notice I'm going to do a little bit of practice touch. Just a few practice touch just before I let go because I'm a little early on my drop zone time, my pull time. There's my buddy Carlos. And I practice a few times, making sure that I can cancel the suicide. And wave off 5, pull, and that is everything you probably ever need to see about situational awareness in the sky. Now we're getting somewhere. First off, what is situational awareness? Situational awareness is being aware of what's around you and how it affects you. Situational awareness is not hypervigilance. I'm back against the wall in the restaurant, so I keep an eye on everything. My head's on a swivel. The problem with looking for trouble when you're looking for trouble is trouble's not often there when you're looking for trouble. And the problem with being overly situationally aware is you go into hypervigilance. Hypervigilance has two really clear problems. One, if you're just hypervigilant and freaked out all the time, you have so many false positives, you really can't see what's going on. The second problem of hypervigilance is it just sucks. And the reason it sucks is it makes you a victim without even having the crime. If you think about it, if you're looking everybody for the machete, the hockey mask, and the chainsaw, it's really hard for you just to enjoy the day-to-day life of getting by. There's some other problems, though, that some people have about situational awareness, and that is they have magical thinking. Magical thinking. Well, I only need to be aware when I'm in high traffic areas. You know, I live in a safe neighborhood, or I shop only in safe neighborhoods. Personally, I find that very fascinating. I hear this all the time. I live in a safe neighborhood. I don't go to those dangerous places. Like the criminals have some big Google map they're working off of. Ooh, can't go there to rape, rob, and hurt. That's that safe neighborhood. The other problem I have is some people who are in denial. The problem with denial is they think it'll never happen to me. And the problem is, as long as you don't think it'll ever happen to you, you won't be motivated to make those little changes. Makes a criminal's job much more difficult to victimize. And then finally, the hardest thing about situational awareness that people get wrong is, I don't need to be situational aware. I got me a gun. I'll just shoot if I got a problem. I like to think of situational awareness in a gun like my parachute with my reserve. When I jumped out that plane, I have two parachutes. I have one that's packed by a pretty confident person, but my reserve is packed by a professional. And every 6 months, that professional has to repack the thing and sign off for it. And it's packed very carefully. It takes like 5 minutes to pack the main chute, but that reserve chute probably takes 35, 40 minutes to pack it. If I have to go to my gun, or in this analogy, my reserve parachute, I hope a whole bunch of stuff had gone wrong. Now, why do you want a more systematic approach to situational awareness? The reason is for me, based on my wife, she spent 30 years in oncology. Situational awareness to me is like cancer. If you talk to my wife about cancer and cures for cancer, she'll tell you her favorite cure is early detection. Her theory is the quicker you can find that stuff, the more options we have to fix it, and probably less traumatic those fixes for that cancer are going to be. So for me, increased situational awareness means I get more time to make decisions, more time to move, more time gives me more options. Also, by having more time, I can also read the situation more accurately. If all of a sudden you step around a corner and someone's got a baseball bat raised, you have fractions of a second to figure out if your head's about to be split or someone's on the way to a softball field. So for me, situational awareness gives me more time gives me more options, and those more options give me a chance to read the situation better and much more clearly. Now, the first thing we're going to talk about today is what patterns and habits of behavior create a system that allows you to have a better chance of a higher level of situational awareness. Now, why do I say system, not just tips? For me, in my world, tips don't really work. And the reason why they don't work is because we can't manage what we can't measure. If you have a system-based approach to pretty much anything in life, and you do it consistently over time, you can refine that. The problem with situational awareness is you don't really know when those situational awareness kept you out of trouble and when you just sort of got lucky. So we want a system-based approach. Now, I may say this a couple of times, so please just kind of hang with me, but the problem with looking for trouble, when looking for trouble, is trouble seldom there when you're looking for trouble. If I can get my buddy here to generate the picture of the man with the machete for you. I was on patrol one day, and there's a guy walking down the street with a machete. He has no shirt on. He's in a pair of shorts. It's incredibly hot, and he's not sweating. And we call this in police work a clue. I don't know if you can see in that shot. That machete's right down there. I took a picture because I had a feeling this thing was going to be a problem. As it turned out, it worked out okay because I used everything from this book on de-escalation and sorted it out. The first thing is, since trouble's rarely there when you're looking for trouble, we need to define what we're looking for. What I want you to understand is 99.5% of the time in this world, your world's a beautiful, calm place. And that's called the baseline of behavior. And if you function like you're in a high-risk environment every time you move and through any transitional space, and a transitional space for me is any place between a safe place and another safe place. Skydiving again. When I was in the airplane and the pilot's flying and the door's closed, that's pretty much a safe space. There's not much I can do to affect my outcome. But the minute the door rolls up and I step out the airplane, when I leave that airplane, I assure you until I landed and I'm back in the packing room near my locker, that's a transitional space. And I need to be very alert. So I'm looking for baseline. What is normal baseline? The best way I can explain baseline behavior of life is sort of life has a rhythm to it. And you're looking for the rhythm. If I go into a rock concert and everybody's bouncing around and they're jamming, and there's some dude over there just like this looking around at the crowd, that is not normal behavior. That is at something above or below the baseline, an anomaly above or below the baseline. If I go into a coffee shop and someone's on the chair going, woo, 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 and everyone else is trying to read or work on the computer, that is something above the baseline. Now, things could also be below the baseline as well. So you come into a gas station and you don't see the clerk and you don't see any people, and it's 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock in the afternoon. That's an anomaly. That's something that doesn't read right. When I'm out in public, I'm looking for certain things that are above or below the baseline. Now, so the classic things you look for is either dominant or submissive behavior, comfortable, uncomfortable behavior. And those are excellent things to look for. But what I'm really looking for my baseline when I'm out in public, especially if I'm in transitional spaces, is whether they are paying attention to the world around them or they're oblivious to the world around them. I want you to think about this for a second. I found this out once at a wedding reception where I was there for another police officer who was, I don't want to identify which side of the family they were, but the police officer had a lot of police officer people in their side of the wedding. When we went to the reception, the other person who was getting married, without identifying in my life who was who, their family's a little sketchier. What was really funny is we're at the reception looking around. You could definitely see the cops are all doing this, and the other sort of more criminally minded family members are kind of doing this. Everyone else is just sort of in their conversations, oblivious to the world. But we were definitely checking each other out. So you're in line for your refreshments or the buffet line. It was like, and that's really what situational awareness is if you think about it, if you're not looking to hurt somebody, you're probably just involved with getting out of your car, going to the store, coming back. You're not looking around or whatnot. If you're in a parking lot or transitional space and you're looking around, you're either a cop, a bad guy, or one of y'all. Because we're the only people who are not in our own little world. We're looking around. And I'm looking around to see if somebody's interested in what I'm doing, because basically I don't do anything worth observation. So that's the first step. Baseline and look at anomalies. You can't tell what doesn't belong there unless you identify what the baseline is. So the first step of situational awareness is understanding there's a baseline to activities and you're looking for things above it or below it. And the problem is there's emphatic and there's subtle clues to this. There's emphatic, which is a hockey mask and the chainsaw, and you think, ring-o. But there's also very subtle clues. You're walking down the parking lot to go in the store, coming from the store back to your car, for a classic example. All of a sudden you see an irregular pattern of movement. Somebody cues out on you, they start walking towards you. That right there should clue you in that, hey man, they're paying attention to me. I'm not that interesting. I need to go ahead and deal with this, because the faster I deal with this, the more options I have to deal with it. Options give me time. Time gives me better decisions and to read what's going on. Is this somebody I know from my public, personal, professional life or private life, or is this somebody who's looking to do me harm? Now, once you have the baseline anomalies figured out in your system of situational awareness, we have to go with something called the Cooper color code. Now, for some of you, you're about to fall asleep and go, oh my gosh, Cooper's color code. What's really interesting is I've been teaching this for over 30 years. Originally, it was developed by a man named Colonel Jeff Cooper, a pioneer in the self-defense realm and the modern combat shooting technique. If you don't know him, it's worth your time to Google and find out. He really was a pioneer in keeping you and your family safer. He came up with a color code. The color code's pretty straightforward. You have condition white, yellow, orange, red, and some of them have condition black, depending how you want to work it. Condition white, that means you're completely unaware. You are so internally narrow focused, you have no ability to see trouble coming. You have no way to protect and affect your own self-rescue or affect change. Now, people give code white a bad name. I have a lot of my little techno buddies, tactical buddies. I've never conditioned white. Well, that sucks, because that's why we have Netflix. So you can be in your secure home or your hotel room and have Netflix and chill. When I'm in a restaurant with my friends and I'm enjoying dinner, I'm not sitting there with my back against the wall watching everybody. I'm in condition white. I figure I'm in a fairly neutral location. My risk of attack is very low. Now, one thing I do, though, when I am in condition white is I'm checking for baseline. There's always that sort of, now, some things can be above or below the baseline. If you're a parent, you know about below baseline. You're in condition white, you're watching Netflix, the kids are upstairs playing. All of a sudden, you don't hear the kids playing anymore. You're going, how could that be trouble? If you're a parent, you know exactly it. Hold on, they're quiet. It's too quiet. There's a problem. Let's go see what those little munchkins are up against. But condition white has its place. The problem is if you leave a secure place to go into a transitional space and you're in condition white, you cannot foresee or prevent or manage your own self-rescue in the situation or change anything external. So when you leave condition white, you go in transitional space, you want to be condition yellow. Now, condition yellow is not, oh my gosh, where's the hockey mask and chainsaw? It is externally motivated. I'll explain these quadrants of attention in a minute. It's externally motivated, externally focused, and broad in range, in scope. So when I'm out in public and I get ready to go into transitional space, I want to take just a second, a little tactical pause and go, hey, I'm leaving safe space, going to transitional space. Let's get my head in the game. Where does my focus of attention need to be? It needs to be external and broad. And I need to make sure I monitor my arousal level. Because when I'm out in public in condition yellow, I need to be chill. If I'm not chill, I can't read the baseline because I don't know what's normal because everything's reading. My little amygdala has hijacked my brain and everything's dangerous. Oh my gosh, I need to be chill. And you'll find out why we need to be chill because I need to be able to read my gut. I'll explain that in a minute. So condition yellow means, hey, I'm out in public. I need to have a broad spectrum of awareness. I need to be looking around. Head needs to be high. My foveal vision and my peripheral vision need to work as a team. I just need to scan my area. I'm not expecting any threats. I'm just looking because I need to know what's in my area of responsibility, not responsibility, response-ability, meaning if I'm coming into a very small parking garage, my area of responsibility is all four corners in the parking garage. If I come out into from my car into a big park, somebody 300-400 yards away is probably not my area of responsibility. No matter what they do, it's probably not going to affect me. But maybe my area of responsibility is that parking lot, or maybe it's the 4 or 5 cars around me, or maybe it's just that one car that's got 2 dudes in a van and they're paying attention to me. So condition white, we are having a good time. We're internally narrow focused. We have no ability to say or change. Yellow, we are externally broad focused, looking around. We monitor our arousal system, make sure we're nice and calm, and we're looking for any anomalies above or below the baseline and trying to read what baseline is in the situation. Condition orange. This is where something makes you go, this don't seem right. Or you get a feeling that goes, man, my arousal just went up. There's something inside me that goes, danger, 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 woo, woo, woo. And then you're going to have to go from wide external to narrow external. Now you're focusing on the situation that puzzles you or concerns you or is causing you some sort of concern. While this is good because it helps me focus in on that thing that I noticed that doesn't fit above or below the baseline or set my arousal rate off where I went, man, my gut is telling me something's not right here, I lose overall situational awareness. You can have anything you want in personal protection. You can't have everything. You can have really good focus on a specific threat, but you lose everything else. You can also have really good focus on everything, but you have no ability to really focus in on a specific threat. So we have to be very conscious. And I want to get into quadrants of attention, explain in a minute, but if you're condition orange, that's it. Red means we have some sort of conflict. At this point in time, this is somebody we have to figure out if we have to ask, tell, make, if this is some sort of TEB profile where we need to have thoughts, emotions, behaviors, and figure that profile out. Thoughts, are they clear, contaminated, emotions, high or low? Behaviors, are they compliant or non-compliant? And if you haven't read the Verbal De-Escalation by Austin Davis and Penny Davis, possibly you need to read that to figure out what that is. And to figure out if I need to use 5 steps of de-escalation or go to ask, make, or tell. Condition red means I'm going to be externally focused. My arousal rate's going to go high. I have to monitor my breathing because if I let my arousal breathing rate go up too high and I get one of these things going, then I really start limiting my ability to think clearly, and I'm going to go into what's called a primal, not a logical response time. And then condition black, for a lot of people, they add this and they don't add this, but I want y'all to be aware of it. If you want to add it, you can. If not, that's okay. Condition black in my world means you have become overwhelmed by events. You are now the passenger. You're no longer the pilot. You are an astronomer. You're not an astronaut. You have just completely washed out and you're responding to their situation by just shutting down. It's a primal response, fight, flight, freeze, and you've chosen to freeze. Now, quadrants of attention. If you have the color code, remember white, yellow, orange, red, and if you want to add black, that's fine. This allows you to shift gears. So whenever you're out in public, you always have the right amount of awareness. You don't get hyper aware or you don't get hyper complacent, and you can find a way to function your world in a system where you can physically think, okay, I'm getting ready to get out of my car and I'm going to the store. What condition do I need to be in? I need to be in yellow, chill, low arousal rate, externally motivate, externally attention, very broad base. Now, when I talk about quadrants of attention, as you may or may not be aware of, I'm a police officer and I'm an old police officer. And unfortunately, being an old police officer means I got to train baby cops. In my state, that's called an FTO. I'm a field training officer. I say baby cops, and I try to make them live long enough to be an old cop. One of the hardest things I have to do is to teach them about quadrants of attention, because let's just use a baby cop, an experienced cop on a traffic stop. When you get out of the car as a police officer to do just I hate to use the word routine, but just a conventional traffic stop. First off, when you leave the car, you got to be externally motivated because you don't want to get hit by cars around you. You got to know what's in your background. If there's some sort of violent encounter, if you have to shoot, what's going to eat all this stuff up. So you need to be externally motivated, externally focused, and broadly focused. As I start walking up the car, though, that has to narrow down. The problem is when you narrow down, you need to know where to narrow that thing to where it's really important. A lot of my baby cops, they look right at the driver's face. The problem is they lose the whole situational awareness of the gun in the console, the drugs on the floorboard, all the other things that come from having a wider focus and locus of attention. So when it comes to quadrants, there's 4 quadrants. The first quadrant is internal and narrow. What this means is if you're on your phone, you're really kind of in your own little world. You're really not outside your bubble. If you're home watching Netflix and chill, you're kind of inside your own little bubble. Internal, broad or wide means I'm walking out to the car, but I'm trying to find which key I'm going to use, or I'm thinking about the next stop I'm going to make, which means I'm not really inside my body, but I really have no ability to see trouble or affect change if it shows up. Now, both these have their place, but when we're out in public, we really want to have the other two, and that is either external broad, like condition yellow, where I'm looking around, I don't see any threats, or external narrow, which I'm focused in on a threat. Now, this is not just a switch you turn on and leave on. If I see a threat in narrow, I need to pop out possibly and look wide and see, wolves travel in packs. Is his buddy coming up behind me? If I do think there's going to be a potential for gunplay here, and I think this is going to guns, I better start looking wide behind them, because as you know, I'm responsible, and you are too, for every round we fire. And if I shoot and I miss and it goes into a school bus full of children, this is a catastrophe beyond belief. So I've got to be aware of the whole situation and where I'm at. So these quadrants of attention will really help your situational awareness. And so as you go through your day and you're in condition yellow, make sure you're external, broad, okay? If you're in condition white, internal, narrow. If you're trying to do some sort of skill-based task, like unlocking the car, loading the kids up, you might be external, broad. And if you see something out, you might have to be external, narrow. But being conscious is called gaze control. And why I keep harping on this and why I'm spending so much time on this is, as you may or may not know, for the last 12 years, I've owned a company called the Virtual Tactical Academy. I traveled the United States with a simulator that's got over 1,000 use of force scenarios filmed with live actors and branching video. And I can, because it's a simulated gun, I can stand in front of them and I can watch. And I've watched thousands of people where their eyes are. And it's amazing after watching these scenarios, these students' scenarios, how I noticed that there's a very, very different thing between a 30-minute cop and a 30-year cop when they're doing this. There's a very, very different of somebody who is a parent of 3 kids. A lot of times they do a lot better than somebody who may not be a parent, because they're used to multitasking and kind of keeping track of all the kids and where their attention needs to be focused. So gaze control and quadrant of awareness is very important if you're going to try to be system-based. Now, let's talk about something else in situational awareness a lot of people don't talk about. Your central or foveal vision is real clear. That means the stuff you're looking at right now, my face, you're probably seeing that real clear. But when you see my face real clear, all the stuff behind me, the firearms legal protection, yay, the people who keep me safe, that help me with the fight after the fight, my concealed coalition, the compliance is no guarantee of safety, and my on air, they might fuzz out. When you look at something, you get an advantage. Remember, we have anything we want, we just can't have everything. So when you look and you focus on my face, all the stuff vanishes. Now, if you start looking at the wall, you'll notice that little focus of attention goes there. It's really kind of hard to take the whole wall in and get clear. If you need to see something in detail in there, you have to kind of move your eyes to that. That's part of the gaze control and part of the quadrants of attention, but there's another part to that too we have to look at, and that is where your head's at. If you'd like to have a universal victim standard, here's what I want it to be. When you walk in public, look down. Now I want you to play a little game with me. I'm not setting you up. I want you to focus right on the tip of my nose. Just focus right on the tip of my nose. As you do that, I want you to start lowering your chin. Just keep trying to look at my nose, keep trying to look at my nose, keep trying to look at my nose, keep going down. You might notice after a while you can't see me. Your peripheral horizontal vision, your central foveal vision works in a narrow band and a dot. Your peripheral horizontal vision works in a band. When you look down, that band is working here. That's why literally with your head down, it's like looking at blinders. And if you don't think this is an important concept to try to teach people to keep their head up, to be more situational aware, let's try a few things we always hear after someone calls me and says, one of my former students, I get this all the time. And if you're one of my students and you've had an incident, please call me. Let's debrief. Let me help you through it. Let's see if we learned a lesson. Maybe your lesson can only help you, but it can help my other students. And for over 32 years now, those phone calls and those emails have really sharpened my game to help me help you make your family safer, protect that which matters most. But here's the usual thing here. Austin, they just appeared out of nowhere. Well, I just find this fascinating because apparently we have like cloak of invisibility for bad guys, or the guy just looked up and there they were. So a lot of this has to do with the physical ability to keep your foveal vision here, your horizontal vision working here, working in a band, and understanding you can only stare at one thing at a time if you're looking for detail. Now, trust your gut. This is a tough one. Up until now, we've pretty much scientific quadrants of attention, neurolinguistic programming. I got all this stuff down, gaze control training and how that works out real well. But there are times you have to trust your gut. If you're in condition yellow, I don't know if you remember, I told you, let's kind of watch our arousal level. I want to be as chill as I can in public. I want to exude a nice, calm, confident demeanor. There's no reason to get spun up because there's no threat. If there's no threat in 99.9% of your world, why are we walking around all jacked up, just hand on gun, ready to shoot the first person who pops out? That's really not helpful because it just sends off a lot of false alarms, and we can't really figure out what's signal and what's noise when it comes to situational awareness. So what we want to do is we want to listen to our gut. And for me, listening to our gut is one way to explain it, but that's a lot of false positives. For me, I just like to think of it as arousal level. When I get ready to jump out an airplane, if my heart rate and my breathing gets up high and my breathing starts becoming real shallow, panty, and not controlling, all three of my books, Low Light, Situational Awareness, De-escalation, we talk about breathing and how important that is. Because if I stop breathing, my brain's going to starve for information and it's not going to help. So I need to make sure that I'm using combat breathing, square breathing, trying to smell the air, which is my favorite, diaphragmatic breath breathing. And then if something comes into my world that dude just don't seem right, or if that guy walked out and started walking towards me and I feel that arousal rate going up, I need to listen to it. Does that mean I pull my gun and I shoot him? Of course not. Does that mean I turn and run away? Of course not. But when that starts to happen, we need to start figuring out, okay, what am I going to do in this situation? Now, we're going to talk about exactly what to do when you recognize something in here in a second. But a couple of things I want you to do before you get to that place where what happens now is start playing what if games. If I change my path and they start following me, what do I do now? If I can't see their hands, what do I need to do about that now? And as many of these decisions you can make beforehand that are consequential, that'll really help. And one of the things that I like to talk about is the 5 people in your life. There should be 5 people in your life you have no problems dying for or going to prison. For me, it's my wife, my son, Justin. Love out to you, Justin. Love you, man. Best thing ever happened to me. My brother, my niece, my mother. If I screw up and I make a bad call and they don't get hurt and they don't die and they get to go on with their lives, if I get injured, killed with that, that's fine. I'm sacrificial on program. So I don't have to make that decision. If I come across a third-party incident, I've already decided how I'm going to handle that. Interestingly enough, though, I have to have 2 parts in my head. When I'm off-duty Officer Davis, that's different than when I'm with my wife and I'm husband Austin Davis. That's very different. That's also very different if I'm with my son Justin, how I handle that off-duty situation. So we have to have these things all worked out in our heads. So once we see the situation, we can start to form a plan of action. Now, why do we want situational awareness? We want situational awareness because it allows us to see what's going on around us and know how it affects us. What do we do if we get a signal that says, man, we are in trouble, this is going to be a problem, how do we handle it? So we need to have a very concise set of behaviors to figure this out. Now, if something kicks off in your brain and you say, man, this ain't right, irregular path of travel, this person's getting close to me, they're communicating with me, we need to have a set of skill sets to handle that. The first thing is, I just want you to break everybody in this planet down into 3 categories. This may not sit well with some people, but we're only going to put people in 3 categories. This is how my world works. Get ready. There are good people, there are bad people, and there are unknown people. That's all I need to know in a situational awareness. Good people. Why are they good people? Because they're probably oblivious to me and they're just passing me and they don't even notice me. I'm literally invisible to them. Bad people are people who try to get involved with me. And when I tell them, no, I'm not interested, please step back. Please don't hurt me. I need you to go away. And they don't pay attention to me and they don't comply with that simple request because we're in a public place. If I back off, they keep coming. I'm like, hey, I told you back off. That to me is a bad person. Human beings only can communicate 2 ways, force or reason. That's it. And, it's reasonable if I'm walking out in the parking lot and I start walking towards you and you go, hey, back up, you're freaking me out. Oh, I'm sorry, ma'am. Sorry. I didn't mean to get in your space. No problem. Walk on around. That's a good guy, reasonable response. But if it's, hey, what are you all freaked out about? Calm down. You think I'm some sort of bad guy and they start force closing in on you? That's a bad guy. You have to deal with that problem. And remember, wolves travel in packs. Right now, we're seeing a lot more multiple attackers. So just because you got one bad guy in view, make sure you have broad external awareness so that you can see if someone else is slipping up behind you. And then there's unknown. And if it's an unknown person, you have to start thinking about tactics. Anytime you have an unknown person, if they're good, bad, or indifferent, here's what you have to do. We only have three things when you think about tactics. It doesn't mean you have to grow a big beard and get tattoos and talk about how you killed more men than unfiltered cigarettes. To me, tactics are very simple. It's skillful use of time, distance, and safer angles. Time. Do you want to act now, or do you want to wait until it's your turn or you've gathered more information? Sometimes we're going to have to make decisions based on our situational awareness profile where we don't have all the information available. We're going to have to figure out what to do. So do you want to act now, or do you want to wait? A lot of us get really, really amped up and jump into action far too quick. And remember, if you overreact in a situational awareness, self-protection situation, you're in legal trouble. If you underreact, you're in physical trouble. And there's a fine line there. And I wish I could tell you where that line was drawn, but really it's situational dependent, and it's situational dependent on infinite factors. So the first thing you want to understand is time, distance, safer angles. Time, act now or later. Distance, do you want to get closer or farther away? The problem is a lot of times, because the contact is going to be consensual, they're going to say, hey, do you have $1? Do you have the time? I think I know you. I had a flat. Do you know the way of the mall? They're looking for some sort of social relevance. They're trying to use the social contract to build enough trust to get close enough to hurt you. And at that point in time, you have to decide if you're going to tell them, hey, stop. I don't know what you want, but I can't help you. If you back up, I can talk to you. Keep your situational awareness, look on around, get offline, look for his buddies. Or if you decide in the situation that, you know what, I may need to go hands-on, or this is a situation where it is really not permissible for me to pull, point, or use a firearm, but I am in a situation to where I think this guy's about to throw hands on me, and I might need to use pepper spray. And my pepper spray, the one I like, is a palm unit, and it's maybe 10 to 12 feet. So I might need to close that gap from 16, 18 and get it down to 10 or 12 feet within spray range. So time, distance, or safer angles. You know, if someone pops up and they're unknown, and I take 2 steps, and now I put a car between me and them, I put a tree, a parking meter, a fire hydrant, or something. I've got something physically between me and them now to separate us. And if you can control those 3 variables of time, distance, safer angles, and you're thinking about that, you can really help their OODA loop. OODA loop's in all my books. You can check that out. Google it if you need to. Now, verbal commands. This is amazing. After 12 years of Versatile Tactical Academy and literally thousands and thousands of students across the United States, many of them because I'm working with legal protection for self-defense lawyers in my courses. I've had criminal defense lawyers from all over the country in there. One thing that I really think that we need to work on, I'm going to do a webinar just on this topic one day. I'm going to do a whole 30-minute webinar just on this alone, and that is verbal commands, because you're going to talk to more people than you're going to pepper spray. You're going to talk to more people than you're going to pull a gun and point at, and you're going to talk to more people than you pull and point a gun at and shoot. And if you have these skill sets, you may not have to do anything past just talking to them. Verbal commands, to give you the short version of it, I'm doing 3 things. One is freeze. And if I think they're drawing for a gun or doing something that's imminent lethal threat, I may yell freeze, which means, hey, look, I'm so far behind the power curve here. Don't move a darn thing because I've got to figure out what the heck is going on. So that's freeze them. You may want to pin them. Hey, man, I don't know what you're doing, but don't get 1 foot closer to me. Don't get 1 foot closer to my daughter. Don't get 1 foot closer to the front door of my house. You're trying to freeze them in place. You don't care if they do this or this, but they got to get pinned. Or you might need to move her. Look, if you'll back up, I'll talk to you. If you get 3 feet away from me, you're not going to get sprayed. If you stay here, you're about to get sprayed. So freeze them, pin them, move it. Send me an email. We need to spend some time on this. That and ready position with handguns. 2 things that I'm telling you we need to spend more time on. Okay. Now, ask, tell, make. If you're in a situation, your situation awareness pops up, you got somebody in front of you, you're thinking, hey, not good feelings about this, and you ask them, hey, man, can you back up? Hey, man, can you give me 10 feet? Hey, man, I had a rough childhood, and you're kind of triggering me. If you'll back up, I'll talk to you. And they're not doing that. That was asking them. Then you have to get to that ask, tell, make. Then tell them, look, if you don't back up, you and I are going to have a problem. And if they keep coming, you might have to do something about it. Now, there's sort of a step between there. And I think it's called the ultimate question. That is, hey, buddy, is there anything I could say or do to end this in a nonviolent situation and you not put hands on me? If they say no, probably game on and you're ready to go. Ask, tell, make. I call it the Texas method. It actually came from verbal judo, but we've been teaching this in Texas police cars for so long that in my brain, it just comes out as the Texas method. Okay. When do you get to use your force or lethal force? When it comes to protecting yourself, there's 2 buckets. Unfortunately, people who carry a gun only think about gun, and all you have is a hammer, all your problems look like a nail. But in self-defense, we actually have 2 buckets. One of those buckets is going to be non-lethal force, just force. Pushing somebody, punching somebody, pepper spraying somebody, hitting them in the face with a bright light. anything but deadly force. Deadly force bucket you can only pull out when you detect a situation. Your situational awareness gives you a clue that, hey man, I'm facing imminent risk of serious bodily injury or death. And in that case, then in most situations, you can present your deadly force. But unless you have that situation, it's real clear. And it's in that point of the crime, because remember, you may pick this up earlier and not be able to use deadly force, not that it will be later or needed later on, but if you can't mitigate it at this point, you're in trouble. So understand where they are. If you've ever watched the Concealed Coalition University episode on pepper spray, and I really wish you would, it's one of my favorites. I start the thing off with explaining in about 85-90% of the time, in about 85-90% of the time, your handgun is 100% the wrong tool. And the reason I say this is because a lot of these attacks that you're trying to use your situational awareness to avoid, these things are just ordinary force. And you really haven't rise the level of having to use deadly force. So you need to have something between profanity and a pistol, and that's situational awareness pepper spray. The other great thing about situational aware pepper spray for me is it's in my hand, it's socially invisible. When people are in the parking lot looking for victims, who do you want to pay attention to? Someone who's got a internal, narrow quadrant of attention, their head's down so they can't see what's going on. It's essentially like looking at a victim with blinders on. They're exhibiting unaware behavior, submissive behavior, and their uncomfortable behavior. This just screams out weakest gazelle at the water hole. But if you have pepper spray, it might be a big different deal. Now, if your situational awareness says, man, I have to use a gun, and this is the question I get in my classes all the time, because in the middle of this scenario, my student who's got the simulated pistol will turn to me and go, can I shoot him? I always go, I don't know, you got the gun, can you? It's your question. When they ask me, can I shoot him, they're actually asking a bunch of questions. But if they do pull their gun out, anywhere you go on the planet, they're probably going to judge you on 5 things. I-RAP. I-RAP. It's an acronym. It stands for innocence. Are you innocent? Did you start off a road rage situation where you cut him off? There's a bunch of fingers being pointed, and all of a sudden now you two are getting ready to toss hands or pull guns. You're not innocent situation. Or did it start off innocent, but as they started running away or they started leaving your house, you go chase them and shoot them down in the back as they're running away. You lost your innocent status. That's one of the reasons why I'm not a big fan of using profanity, verbal commands, because a lot of things are recorded in this world. I think for a lot of juries, that looks like you were trying to escalate the situation. And as you learned in my book, de-escalation, first rule of de-escalation, don't escalate. So, I-RAP. First thing is you're innocent. Next thing is imminent. That means the threat is right now. Not that I think they were going to mess with me last week or next week. The situation is right now. And if you go to grab your gun and they drop their gun or they drop the machete or the hockey mask and the chainsaw, that situation's over. The gun's got to put away or can't come out. So you have to think about that. Imminence is not something that's an on or off thing. It's a situation that opens and closes all the time. So are you innocent? Is the threat imminent right now? I-RAP. R. Is your response reasonable? Basically, this is the most important part that we don't understand. Your situational awareness is designed to help you make reasonable decisions. More time means more options mean hopefully better outcomes. When both sides, if it goes to trial, get through this and the judge is telling the jury instructions, basically what they're saying is, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you've now heard all the evidence. Here's the short version. Is what the defendant did, was it reasonable? And then you're going to trust random strangers picked from your community who may or may not be a similar mindset of you of personal protection, Second Amendment, deciding these things. So was your behavior reasonable? I don't know. And was it avoidable? I-RAP. Innocence, imminence, reasonable, avoidable. A lot of you go, I got stand ground rules in my state. Yeah, that's great, but juries hate that stuff. And besides, remember, anytime we go into combat, there's greater than 0 chance of death, serious bodily injury, criminal incarceration, civil case that ruins you forever, or social pariah. So the best fight's a fight that you close the door and drive away, close the door to your house, doesn't have it. You turn away, run away, find some way to tactically say you're sorry and back your way out of this thing. If you can avoid it, you win. That's the cleanest win you'll ever have. I know it's not what you want to hear from your firearms instructor, your national director of training, but trust me, anything we can avoid, we win. It's a clean win. Trust me on this. The last thing is proportional. That means if somebody comes up and just has words, you can't just spray them or shoot them. You have to make sure that your response is there. And you understand very clearly what those 2 buckets are, which is, look, words are not working. I need to use force, but it's not yet got to where the gun is. Now, you want to go toss hands with somebody. You want to BJJ them. You know, if you're a judo expert and your tool is planet Earth, you're going to hit them with the planet when you whack them. Hey, good on you, man. I am 60 years old. I do not want to toss hands. I do not want to get around and exchange pathogens. I don't get spit on, bit on, or punched on because I don't know who I'm dealing with. So if I can find any way to avoid this thing but have a proportional response that doesn't take me into an area where I'm using more force than I need to, because if we're safety, good guy, defenders are good people defenders, we need to be able to scale that force to their proportional response. That's important. So what's the whole point of this whole webinar? I hope you start taking a more systematic approach to situational awareness. And I started my whole webinar off with this. I get calls all the time. Austin, I need one of your classes. And I go, what do you need? I teach a bunch of classes. I want to learn to shoot and be safer. Those are usually separate topics that are seldom ever intersect. If you really want to be safer, and if you have somebody in your life who doesn't want to carry a pepper spray, doesn't want to carry a gun, but you want to be safer, trust me on this. Don't harp on the pepper spray. Don't harp on the gun. Don't harp on the hype Candela flashlight. Harp on situational awareness. If you really want to train them to be safer, that's really more important than going, you must have a gun or you must carry pepper spray, because none of this stuff really works if you don't have enough early warning to get this thing out and get in play and read the situation for what it really is. Because I'll tell you, as a police officer, a lot of times what I hear on the radio called in from the dispatch, what I see when I first show up, it doesn't turn out to be what really is going on. And, the most important thing you can figure out in any situation is what is really going on. First step to solving any problem is accurate diagnosis of the problem. And the sooner we see that, the more time we have, the better we have to cognitively kind of grind on through it and figure that on out. In closing, hey, a couple quick things. Number one, all 4 of my books are now on Amazon. I kind of feel like I've made it. Yay. I think you can go to concealcoalition.com, and I think we'll put the address down here. You can get them from the Conceal Coalition website as well. Also, your phone, do me a favor. If you will text me this number, it'll go into my phone and my stuff will go in yours. If you have any questions, I love these questions. And trust me, no matter what answer I give, I promise you, I'm going to learn more from you than you from me. And it's amazing how often these questions come in that allow me to go ahead and build a class out for it or add something to one of my classes that may help someone else. So please, if you have any questions or you have something you want to add or you have a near miss or a scary situation, please call me and talk to me about it. I'd love to chat about it. And also, come see me live. And you can check the Conceal Coalition website to see where I'll be next. And love to see you out in the real world. All this stuff needs to be pressure tested in my simulator. So there's knowledge, skill, and judgment. Out of this, I hope you got some knowledge, and I hope you practice what I talked to you about today so you could get some skill. But the judgment part, how to put it all together, that really works best in a simulator. We can stop and go, hey, what are you hearing? What are you seeing? What are you thinking? And then we'd like to try it again and work through so we can get you through the judgment part of these things. I don't want the first time you have to make a life and death decision to be out in the middle of a parking lot at 3:30 in the morning or 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I'd really rather be in a controlled environment with you and me so we can work through to put this in your head so that everything all kind of fits in a nice, neat, orderly way. So when you get in a high stress situation or arousal rates go up, one of these things goes off, you're prepared to deal with it. And as I close off everything, never forget, be a guardian always and a warrior when needed.